Vasudevasutam Devam Kamsachanuramardanam Devaki Paramanandam Krishnam Vande Jagadgurum Asato ma Sadgamaya Tamaso ma Jyotirgamaya Mrityormamritangamaya. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Let us offer our salutations to Lord Krishna, the Supreme Lord of the Universe, the embodiment of supreme bliss, who came to establish dharma and punish the wicked. Let us pray to him to lead us from unreal to real, to lead us from darkness of ignorance to the light of knowledge, to lead us from death to immortality. Surely we will achieve this prayer if we really follow the message of Sri Krishna in the Bhagavad Gita. Lord Krishna has said very clearly what's to be done. And it's for us to take and do it. So, Krishna is very gracious to give us this message of Gita. And he has clearly stated the importance of human life and the way to practice spirituality. Verse number 21, chapter 5. Bahyasparshe svasaktatma vindatyatmani yat sukham sabrahma yoga yuktatma sukham akshaya visnute. See how Sri Krishna points out exactly where to get into the experience of the bliss of the Atma. So the meaning of this verse is, with the mind unattached to the external contacts, the being discovers bliss in the Atman. With the mind engaged in the meditation of Brahman, he enjoys undying bliss. So as had been said earlier, mind plays a very important role in our life. So it depends upon how we manage our mind, how we monitor the activities of the mind, how we control the mind, how we are really serious about practicing spirituality and denying the truth. All these factors are very important. So, here Lord Krishna points out that one to be established in Atman. Atman is the Chaitanya Swarupa, the individual consciousness which is shining in everyone's heart in the form of Jyoti, light, Atma Jyoti. When Akshay Kumar passed away in Calcutta, Sri Ramakrishna's close relation, he saw Jyoti going out, moving in the sky. And Sri Ramakrishna recognized that is the soul of the Akshay who died. The soul, the individual being, goes in the form of Jyoti, light. That individual being is always associated with the mind. He carries on his own mind from births after births. Mind continuously comes and plays a crucial role in everyone's life. So, to be well established in Atman, to experience that ecstatic bliss, mind should be withdrawn from sense objects causing temporary pleasures. These pleasures, what we find in this world, they are like baits. They are preventing us to enter into the realm of the divine light. Just like the mouse is drawn towards the bait and doesn't enter the granary where there is a huge stock of foodstuff. It is like that. And why it is done like that? That is very nicely explained by all the Mahatmas, that it is a game. That's all. No more explanation. Game. Do your game properly, play properly, play well and get out. That's all. The same Bhagavata is clearly stated, Leela Kshetra. This Bhuloka is meant for game. So in order to do that, mind should realize the unpleasant serious consequences of its attachment to sense objects. Then only mind doesn't go there again. Then mind becomes no more duped by the sense objects. On the other hand, it takes inward turn. Now the mind is externalized. So mind is always going out, searching for the sense objects. Once it knows the bad effect of pursuing the sense pleasures, then the mind turns inward. And it tries to be focused on the Atman. Meditation is nothing but concentrating our attention on the Atman, the divine light, dwelling in our heart, taking the form of our chosen deity, whomsoever we are worshipping. So God is both form and formless. That's why God is represented as Om. Om represents both. Om represents Parabrahman, the absolute reality. Om represents also the relative reality, the manifestation of the absolute. Om represents both. That's why they say when you do Archana, worship of God, Om Madhusudanaya Namaha, Om Damodaraya Namaha, Vasudevaya Namaha, they say every time you utter the name of the Lord, it must be preceded by Om. It must be done. Om Madhusudanaya Namaha, Om Krishnaya Namaha, Om Ganeshaya Namaha, Om Ramaya Namaha. But we have seen the doing. There is no Om. They go. What kind of worship they do, what kind of satisfaction the devotees feel, it is open to their own experiences. But if you do improperly, it won't give result. Just the way it is. So you should know it correctly. It should be done this way and do it. Not doing in a haphazard way, careless way. So when the mind is fully concentrated on Atman, it experiences immense peace and imperishable bliss. Imperishable. Once it tastes that bliss, it doesn't want any other happiness. Once Swami Vivekananda said to Sri Ramakrishna, Master, I would like to be always in Samadhi. What? You have come here to do my mission. You want to spend whole day, whole night in Samadhi? Because he was feeling so ecstatic. And Sri Ramakrishna also, he has seen in his life, if you study, how many times he would go into Samadhi. It is too difficult to come to the normal worldly plane. He has to force himself. I want to drink water, I want to drink water. 10 times he has to force it. Then the mind comes down. Or somebody should utter some Om, something, some mystical syllable into the ears of Sri Ramakrishna. Then the mind will come down. The point is that joy is like that. Once you have that joy, you don't like to come down from that state. So we find this sloka of the Bhagavad Gita implies that there are two types of joy. Two types. One is imperishable, everlasting joy. The other one is perishable, causing unpleasantness. The imperishable joy is nowhere outside, but in one's own Atman. The joy one gets in the world through the contact of sense objects is said to be perishable joy. It is not permanent. Moreover, that happiness which we derive from the sense objects is always mixed with some sort of unpleasantness, unhappiness. Either in the beginning or in the end, it happens. It's not totally joyful. That's the meaning. So that means its nature is coming and going. The nature of the worldly happiness, which people chase to enjoy them more and more. In fact, this worldly happiness is compared to shadow happiness. Shadow. It's not the real one. The real happiness is in the Atman. Atman itself. That's why we always say, focus your attention on the heart center. Close your eyes. Why? So that you can see inside. Generally we see eyes open, When you see when the eyes are open, you see outside. Suppose I close my eyes, I am seeing inside automatically. That's the purpose of seeing, closing the eyes. Closing the eyes also means shut down all the sense organs from going outward. Ears, nose, mouth, etc. All the energy must be focused on a single point, that is consciousness. So this joy of the Atman, the real joy, is reflected in the sense objects and shows up as pleasure of the senses. That's why I called it as shadow happiness. The dull-witted, not knowing this truth, think that happiness lies outside and so chase the sense objects to get it more and more. In that process, the person makes his precious life futile, like a dog biting the dry bone. The blood oozes out from its own biting process. And the dog tastes it, thinking foolishly, it has come out of the bone it was biting. Thinking of the reflected momentary happiness derived from the contact of the sense objects as a permanent one, commit dangerous blunders in life. That's about the dull-witted people. That means whose intellect is not quite sharp enough to probe. But the wise ones, in whom the wisdom has awakened, he discovers the miserable reactions in the pursuit of sensual pleasures and the sense objects causing these pleasures. So he rejects them. He doesn't show any interest in them anymore. On the other hand, he begins to explore the joy of Atman in his own heart and make his life blessed and fulfilled. This human life is meant for that purpose, but nothing else. In a way, if we are not practicing spirituality, we are not struggling towards realizing the true nature of our inner self, it means we are just abusing this most golden, precious human life. If one doesn't get dispassion in sense pleasures, mind does not turn up from them and go inward. If the mind does not turn inward, hearing about Atman and contemplation on it do not be done in a proper way. So, before experiencing the happiness of Atman, one should be freed from the infatuation of objects of senses. He should have established in total vairagya towards these sense objects. So, 3 points are expressed in this verse number 21. First point is, location of happiness is not outside, but in one's own self. That's the first point. Second point is, external happiness is momentary and it is mixed with pain and sufferings. Third point, the sense objects are obstacles to experience the happiness of Atman. So, one should not get attached to the sense objects. One who runs after the sense pleasures, therefore, cannot get the experience of real happiness in Atman. They are quite opposite. External happiness is opposite of the internal happiness. Diametrically opposite. That's about the verse number 21. Verse number 22. Yehi samsparshada bhoga dukkha yonaya evate adyantavantak kaunteya nateshu ramate buddhaha. The pleasures that are born of contacts with objects are verily wombs of pain, for they have a beginning and an end. Arjun, the wise do not rejoice in them. That's the meaning of this verse number 22. So, a person cannot renounce action as long as he desires worldly pleasures. As long as one cherishes a desire for enjoyment, one performs action. A bird sat absent-mindedly on the mast of a ship anchored in the Ganges. Slowly the ship sailed out into the ocean. Sri Ramakrishna gives this example in the Gospel. When the bird came to its senses, it could find no shore in any direction. It flew towards the north, hoping to reach land. It went very far and grew very tired, but could find no shore. It went in all directions, but futile attempts. What could it do? It returned to the ship and sat on the mast. After a long while, again the bird wanted to try other directions. But wherever it tried, it could not find the land. So, then finally, when all its attempts to find the land were futile, it came down and sat there without making any further effort. It no longer felt restless or worried because it was free from worry. It made no further effort. It was peaceful. Then Sri Ramakrishna says, worldly people wander about to the four quarters of the earth. Why? For the sake of happiness. But they don't find it anywhere. They only become tired and weary when through their attachment to lust and gold, they only suffer misery. They feel an urge toward dispassion and renunciation. They become so much dissatisfied, discontented with the worldly pleasures, and they feel totally disgusted and reject them. But most people cannot renounce lust and gold without first enjoying it. Even after enjoying also, people may not renounce. Anyway, or at least there are some people who can open up their wisdom. There are two sorts of people. Those who stay in one place and those who go about to many places. There are some aspirants who visit many sacred places. They can't settle down in one spot. They must drink the water of many holy places. Thus roaming about, they satisfy their unfulfilled desires. At last, they build a hut in one place and settle down there. Then, free from worry and effort, they meditate on God. And Sri Ramakrishna tells further, but what is there to enjoy in the world? Lust and gold. That's only a momentary pleasure. One moment it exists and the next moment it disappears. Sri Ramakrishna says further, a man cannot get rid of body consciousness as long as he is attached to worldly things and becomes enamored of worldly pleasures. As he becomes less and less attached to worldly things, he approaches nearer and nearer to the knowledge of self. He also becomes less and less conscious of his body. He attains Atma Jnana when his worldly attachment totally disappears. Then he realizes that body and soul are two separate things. It's very difficult to separate with a knife the kernel of a coconut from the shell before the milk inside has dried up. But when the milk dries up, the kernel rattles inside the shell. At that time it loosens itself from the shell. Then the fruit is called a dry coconut. The sign of a man's having realized God is that he has become like a dry coconut. He has become utterly free from the consciousness that he is the body. He does not feel happy or unhappy with the happiness or unhappiness of the body. He does not seek the comforts of the body. He roams about in the world as a Jivan Mukta, one liberated in life. When you find that the very mention of God's name brings tears to your eyes and makes your hair stand on end, then you will know that you have freed yourself from attachment to worldly pleasures and attained God. If the matches are dry, you get a spark by striking only one of them. But if they are damp, you don't get a spark even if you strike 50. You only waste matches. Similarly, if the mind is soaked in the pleasure of worldly things, then the God consciousness will not be kindled in you. You may try 1,000 times, but all your efforts will be futile. But no sooner does attachment to worldly pleasure dry up, than the spark of God flashes forth. These are the words of Sri Ramakrishna in the Gospel. So, the happiness one derives from contact with sense objects is not permanent. It is not really happiness. Outwardly, it looks like giving happiness, but alas, it is mixed with lot of misery. That's why this worldly happiness is called as wombs of pain. That is the cause of all sufferings in life. There is a saying, Saukyam bindu matrena dukkham parvatamevacha. Meaning, worldly sense pleasures, those start with some happiness in the beginning, but will be followed by a mountain of unhappiness. The substance is that these sense pleasures are momentary and mixed with unpleasant things. They have beginning and end, so the wise should not allow themselves to be swayed by them. It is mentioned dukkha yonayaha. The sense pleasures have in their womb unhappiness. So, one who desires to enjoy the sense pleasures should be prepared to suffer the unhappiness also inherent in them. Knowing this, the wise one rejects these pleasures and impediments. He considers them as impediments for experiencing bliss of the Atma. So he develops vairagya in sensual pleasures. Just as when the X-ray is passed over a body, it reveals inside. Even so, when the mind tries to remember the sense pleasures, that discrimination X-ray, Viveka, is passed over them, and the wise discovers the inherent unhappiness in them, and he becomes indifferent to them. Nateshu ramate buddhaha. The unwise becomes duped by these seeming pleasures and indulges in sense plays and falls into a pit, not able to rise from it. Not only that, just as a fish trapped by a hook of a fisherman gets destroyed, the unwise ruins himself. The fish is drawn by the bait. It is unaware that a trapping rod is linked to the bait. In its enjoyment of the bait, the fish is caught by the rod and meets with its death. This is the meaning of dukkha yoneyaha. In this verse it is pointed out that there are two defects in sense pleasures. One, sense pleasures, though seem to give happiness outwardly, they are inherent with unhappiness. Secondly, the sense pleasures have beginning and end, so they are temporary. Inherent unhappiness and temporariness are inevitable in sense pleasures. Different from sense pleasures, the happiness of the Atman is not like this. There is no trace of unhappiness in the happiness of the Atman. This happiness of the Atman is unbroken and continuous like the flow of oil, taila dharavat. As Atman is permanent, the happiness of the Atman is also permanent. The anatma happiness is like small candle, whereas the Atma Sukha is like the sun that neither rises nor sets. The lamp created by the embodied one is of the nature of being put off, whereas the Atma Bhaskara does not have the nature of being put off like that of the little lamp of the candle. The sense pleasures are like small water bubbles. They immediately dry up, whereas the bliss of the Atman is like the ocean. It never dries up. It is serene. Seeing this remarkable difference between sense pleasure and the bliss of the Atman, the wise are dispassionate towards the sense pleasures and deeply absorbed in the bliss of the Atman. That's why they are called Buddha, meaning they have wise intellect. That means those that are enamored by the external happiness generated by senses with contact with sense objects are really foolish. Whether a person is wealthy or of a high position or a great Pandit in academic sense or a man of heroic deeds, if he is always having sense happiness, even such person is considered as foolish, one without wisdom, according to Bhagavad Gita. Just as serpents have poison in them, the sense pleasures have misery in them. And the sense pleasures are temporary. Therefore, the wise ones not running after the sense pleasures should pursue the bliss of the Atman. Those who live just to enjoy the sense pleasures are like animals without intellect. Verse number 23. Shaknoti haiva yassodam raksharir vimokshanat kamakrododbhavam vegam saripta suzuki naraha. He who is able to withstand the force of lust and anger, even here, before he quits the body, he is a yogi. He is a happy person. Now every word in this verse is very significant. Ihaiva means here only, means in this human life alone we are able to do spiritual practices to achieve liberation. Other than this Manava Loka, it is not possible to achieve this goal in any other place. Even in this world of human beings, it should be achieved in this present life itself. That zeal should be there. Wasting this life without making sincere efforts to think that could be achieved in next life is simply futile thinking. This world of ours is the place for performing actions. Karma bhumi. It is an ideal place to do sadhana. in other worlds, such as heaven, etc., and lower worlds such as Patala, Dasatala, etc., one reaps the fruit of one's actions performed. But in those places, one cannot do fresh actions conducive to liberation. You cannot work out your liberation in other places. It is only in this Manushya Loka one has the opportunity to strive for the realization of the self. In this world only, in this life only, one should do spiritual practices and experience the realization of the Atma. Prak Sharira Vimokshanat means before leaving this body, that is before death. Gita warns that one should withstand the force of passion and anger, because it is not certain that one will get human birth in next birth. Nobody knows. Even if one gets human birth because of his merits, it cannot be assured that he would get right opportunity for doing spiritual practices. Nothing is certain about future life. Nothing is certain about what happens to the soul after death. So, one should make use of this present life properly, by engaging in proper spiritual disciplines, and try best to achieve liberation. Mokshananda. Once you get that experience of freedom, you will be in eternal bliss. So, it is hinting that one should not lose this golden opportunity of human life to attain liberation. Human life is a golden opportunity. Shiryate iti shariram. The nature of the body is to deteriorate. According to its nature, the body cannot remain for a long time. It is like water bubbles. Nobody can say when death would come. It doesn't foretell its arrival. When the serpent wants to enter a home, it comes without anybody's knowledge. Even so, death arrives without anybody's knowledge. There is no definite rule that would predict the death of the person. And we can't say also people die only after becoming old. You can't say. People die even when they are kids, even when they are youths. So one should not keep on thinking, I will do practice later on. Let me enjoy a bit this life. Let me have some fun now. Fun. So, this kind of thinking is utter foolishness. When one gets old age, what will happen? All his sense organs would have become weak, unable to think or meditate properly. Controlling of senses is too difficult. So before one leaves his body, one should withstand the force of lust and anger, approach the Guru and practice spiritual disciplines honestly, and achieve the goal of experiencing bliss of Atman. Regarding this matter, Kena Upanishad says, Na chediga vedimati vinashti. Meaning, it's a great loss if one does not strive for realization of Atman in this life itself. In spiritual practice, one should be smart and alert and be without laziness. Every minute of our life is important. It is said in the Vasishtha Gita, Ayushaha Kshana Ekopi Sarvaratnena Labhyate. The minute that is lost will not come even by paying all the jewels. Therefore, one should make proper use of time pursuing Atma. Sa Naraha. In the verse, there is a word Sa Naraha. It has got two meanings. One meaning is, he who has realized Atman is really a man. Man or woman, whatever it is. Second meaning is, realization of Atman is possible only in human birth, not in heavens. As I already told you, heaven is not karma bhumi, it is bhoga bhumi. There you go to enjoy, or to the lower worlds to suffer. It is only in bhuloka, in this world of ours, we can really do spiritual practice and achieve the goal. Sri Ramakrishna said, many people talk of Brahmajnana, but their minds are always preoccupied with lower things, house, buildings, money, name, and sense pleasures. As long as you stand at the foot of the monument, so long do you see horses, carriages, Englishmen and Englishwomen. But when you climb to its top, you behold the sky and the oceans touching to infinity. Then you do not enjoy buildings, carriages, horses or men. They look like ants. All such things as attachment to the world and enthusiasm for rust and gold disappear after the attainment of the knowledge of Brahman. Then comes the cessation of all passions. When the log burns, it makes a cracking noise and one sees the flame. But when the burning is over and only ash remains, then no more noise is heard. Thirst disappears with the destruction of attachment. Finally comes peace. So, Sri Ramakrishna says, God cannot be realized if there is the slightest attachment to the things of the world. A thread cannot pass through the eye of a needle if the tiniest fiber sticks out. Then Sri Ramakrishna gives a most valid and most inspiring teaching. He says, the efficacy of chanting God's holy name. It is tremendously efficacious. Sri Ramakrishna says, man becomes pure by repeating the name of God. Therefore, one should practice the chanting of God's name. I said to Jadu Malik's mother, Sri Ramakrishna's words I am quoting. I said to Jadu Malik's mother, in the hour of death, you will think only of worldly things, of family, children, executing the will and so forth. The thought of God will not come to your mind. The way to remember God in the hour of death is to practice now the repetition of His name and the chanting of His glories. If one keeps up this practice, then in the hour of death one will repeat the name of God. And Sri Ramakrishna says further, very conclusively, the aim of life is the attainment of God. Work is only a preliminary step. It can never be the end. Even unselfish work is only a means. It is not the end. Shambhu Malik once said to me, Master, please bless me, sir, that I may spend all my money for good purposes, such as building hospitals and dispensaries, making roads and digging wells. I said to him, look, it will be good if you can do these things in a spirit of detachment. But that is very difficult. Whatever you may do, you must always remember that the aim of this life of yours is the attainment of God and not the building of hospitals and dispensaries. Suppose God appears before you and said to you, accept a boon from me, Varamango. Would you then ask him, oh God, build me some hospitals and dispensaries? Or would you not rather pray to him, oh God, may I have pure love at your lotus feet? May I have your uninterrupted vision? Hospitals, dispensaries, and all such things are unreal. God alone is real and all else unreal. Furthermore, after realizing God, one feels that He alone is the doer and we are but His instruments. Then why should we forget Him and destroy ourselves by being involved in too many? Therefore I say again that work is only the first step. It can never be the goal of life. Devote yourself to spiritual practice and go forward. Through practice, you will advance more and more in the path of God. At last, you will come to know that God alone is real and all else is illusory. And that the goal of life is the attainment of God. In order to emphasize this point, Sri Ramakrishna tells the story of the woodcutter. Once upon a time, a woodcutter went into a forest to chop wood. There suddenly he met a brahmachari. The holy man said to him, my good man, go forward. On returning home, the woodcutter asked himself, why did the brahmachari tell me to go forward? Some time passed. One day he remembered the brahmachari's words. He said to himself, today I shall go deeper into the forest. Going deeper into the forest, he discovered innumerable sandalwood trees. He was very happy and returned with cartloads of sandalwood. He sold them in the market and became very rich. A few days later, he again remembered the words of the holy man to go forward. He went deeper, much deeper into the forest and discovered the silver mine near a river. This was even beyond his dreams. He dug out silver from the mine and sold it in the market. He got so much money that he did not even know how much he had. A few more days passed. One day he thought, the brahmachari did not ask me to stop at the silver mine. He told me to go forward. So this time he went to the other side of the river and found a gold mine. Then he exclaimed, just see, this is why he asked me to go forward. Again a few days afterwards, he went still deeper into the forest and found heaps of diamonds and other precious gems. He took these also and became as rich as the god of wealth himself. Therefore, Sri Ramakrishna says, I say that whatever you may do, you will find better and better things if you only go forward. You may feel a little ecstasy as a result of japa, but don't conclude from this that you have achieved everything in spiritual life. Work is by no means the goal of life. Go forward, and then you will be able to perform unselfish work. But again I say, it is most difficult to perform unselfish work. Therefore, with love and longing in our heart, pray to God, O God, grant me devotion at Thy lotus feet and reduce my worldly duties. Please grant me the boon that the few duties I must do may be done in a detached spirit. If you go still further, you will realize God. You will see Him. In time, you will converse with Him. So, Sri Ramakrishna has given so much assurance for people practicing spirituality. So most important point Bhagavad Gita is teaching that human life is most precious and all the sense happiness is temporary and the bliss of the Atman is permanent. One should strive for experiencing the bliss of the Atman in this very life. So every minute of life is golden. A minute lost is a golden time is lost. It never comes back. We do not know when death would come. So our primary duty is, top priority should be practicing spirituality in earnestness, practicing vairagya, developing proper discrimination, and being in holy association, keeping watch over the function of the mind. And we should take necessary steps to purify the mind. Purifying the mind and also not loading the mind with impurities. Both the things must be done. Purifying the mind is done by repeating God's name, doing selfless service, being devoted, surrendering oneself to God. Not allowing impurities into the mind, not being associated with bad company, and in the company of worldly people. Always be careful about association. So these are the words of caution given by Bhagavad Gita in these verses. We shall continue next Tuesday. Om Vasudeva Sutam Devam Kamsa Chanuramardanam Devaki Paramanandam Krishnam Vande Jagadgurum. Let us offer observations to Lord Krishna, the embodiment of bliss, who came to establish dharma and punish the wicked. Let us pray for the well-being of all humanity. Peace, peace, peace be unto all.